If you're over 60 and you suddenly start choking while completely alone, the next 20 seconds may decide everything. And what frightens many doctors is this. Most people instinctively do the wrong thing. They panic, they gasp harder, they waste precious seconds reaching for water. And by the time they realize air is no longer moving, their body is already running out of oxygen. Before we continue, please take a second to like and subscribe. I share these medically grounded health lessons because one small piece of knowledge, learned today, could someday protect you or someone you love. What I'm about to tell you might surprise you. Choking deaths inside the home are far more common in older adults than most people realize. I've seen this happen too many times. Good, healthy people sitting down for a normal meal, laughing during dinner, swallowing too quickly, or taking medications that make the mouth dry. Then suddenly, the airway becomes blocked. And the terrifying part is that choking often begins silently. In movies, people choke dramatically, they wave their arms, they cough loudly, but in real life, severe choking can become almost completely quiet. A person may stand up suddenly, grab their throat, or look confused. Sometimes they can't speak at all. Sometimes they try to inhale, but no sound comes out. If you are alone, you cannot wait for someone to notice. The first thing you must understand is the difference between partial choking and complete airway blockage. If you can still cough, even weakly, that cough is your body trying to save your life. Do not immediately drink water. Do not shove food deeper with your fingers. Keep coughing hard and forcefully. But if no air is moving, if you cannot speak, if your chest feels locked, that is a medical emergency. This is where many people freeze. Your brain begins to panic because oxygen levels are dropping, your heart rate rises, your movements become uncoordinated, and within seconds, thinking clearly becomes difficult. That is why remembering one simple action matters so much. You must create force inside the airway fast enough to push the object out before your body weakens. Most people have heard of the Heimlich maneuver, but very few realize you can perform a version of it on yourself. And if you're alone, knowing how to do this immediately may buy you the time your brain and lungs desperately need. The danger after 60 is even greater because aging changes the swallowing muscles. Certain medications, dentures, dry mouth, neurological conditions, and slower reflexes can all increase choking risk. Even fatigue plays a role. Sometimes the body simply doesn't coordinate swallowing as smoothly as it once did. And what scares many emergency physicians is that people often ignore the warning signs leading up to a choking episode. Small coughing fits during meals, feeling like food sticks in the throat, needing repeated sips of water to swallow. These are not always harmless aging symptoms. Your body may already be trying to warn you. When someone is choking alone, the most dangerous moment is not always the blockage itself. It is the hesitation that follows. In my experience, people often pause, hoping the situation will somehow resolve on its own. They swallow again. They take a breath that doesn't come. They try to stay calm, but inside the body, oxygen is dropping faster than most realize. What I want you to understand is this. Your body will not wait for help. If the airway is fully blocked, you have only seconds before dizziness begins, and shortly after that, consciousness can fade. So what should you do if you are alone and cannot breathe? First, do not waste time running around the room. Do not try to drink water. That instinct is very common, but it can make the situation worse if the airway is fully blocked. Instead, your goal is to create a sudden, strong upward pressure in your abdomen to force air out of your lungs and push the obstruction upward. If you are standing, make a fist with one hand and place it just above your belly button. Hold that fist with your other hand and thrust inward and upward sharply. It is not a gentle movement. It is a quick, forceful motion designed to mimic the Heimlich maneuver on yourself. Many people don't realize this is possible, but it is one of the most important self-rescue techniques you can learn. If you are too weak to stand or your balance is affected, there is another method. Lean your upper abdomen over a firm surface like the back of a chair, a counter edge, or even a table. Then push yourself forcefully downward. The goal is the same: sudden pressure to dislodge the blockage. It may feel uncomfortable to think about doing this, but in a real emergency, discomfort is not the concern. Airflow is. What I often tell my patients is this: in choking, hesitation is more dangerous than action. Even imperfect action is better than none. Another critical detail most people overlook is posture. Staying upright is important because gravity can sometimes help the object shift. Panic, however, can cause people to collapse or lie down, which may make breathing even harder. And here is something subtle but important. During a choking episode, your body will produce strong signals of distress: tight chest, sudden fear, sweating, and a rising sense of urgency. Many mistake this for panic alone, but if it is combined with inability to speak or breathe, it should always be treated as an emergency first, not anxiety. There is also a window that few people recognize. In the early seconds of choking, oxygen is still present in the lungs. That means quick, decisive movement has a real chance of success. But if you delay, the body loses coordination, and the ability to perform even simple actions becomes difficult. That is why preparation matters more than fear. Because in the next moments, I want to explain something even more important: what happens inside your body when oxygen starts to drop, and why people sometimes lose awareness faster than expected. As oxygen levels begin to drop during choking, something very important happens inside your body, and most people are completely unaware of it until it is too late. At first, your brain reacts with alarm. That sudden wave of fear, that intense urge to do something immediately, is actually your nervous system trying to protect you. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense, and your body prepares for survival. But here is what many people don't realize: the brain is extremely sensitive to oxygen loss. Within seconds of a complete airway blockage, thinking starts to narrow. You may notice confusion, even though only moments ago everything felt clear. This is not weakness, it is physiology. I've seen patients describe it as, "My mind went blank all of a sudden." That is the early effect of oxygen deprivation, and this is exactly why choking is so dangerous when you are alone. Because the very system you rely on to save yourself, the brain, begins to lose efficiency right when you need it most. If you are still conscious at this stage, every second must be used with intention. Not panic, not random movement, but focused action. One of the most important signs to watch for is your ability to cough. If you can still produce a strong cough, your airway is not completely blocked. That cough is your body's natural emergency system. It creates bursts of pressure that may dislodge the object. In that moment, continuing to cough forcefully is one of the safest actions you can take. But if coughing stops entirely or becomes silent, that is when urgency increases dramatically. At that point, you may feel a tightening sensation in the chest or throat. You might instinctively reach for your neck. Some people experience a wave of heat or sudden sweating. Others feel a rising sense of fear without understanding why. These are not random symptoms. They are the body's response to air starvation. And here is something I want you to remember very clearly. Oxygen deprivation does not always feel dramatic at first. It can feel like a strange pressure, a moment of confusion, or a sudden inability to form words. That is why awareness is so critical. Many older adults also have what we call silent aspiration risk, where small pieces of food or liquid occasionally enter the airway during swallowing without immediate choking. Over time, this can increase sensitivity and make full obstruction more likely. Certain conditions can increase this risk further: reduced saliva production, slower swallowing reflexes, dental issues, or even talking while eating. I've seen many choking events begin during a completely ordinary conversation at the dinner table. The tragedy is that most of these situations are preventable if people recognize early warning signs. Even something as simple as frequently needing to clear your throat while eating or feeling like food briefly sticks should not be ignored repeatedly. These small signals are your body's way of asking for attention. But in a true choking emergency, there is no time for analysis. There is only action. And in the next part, I will show you the exact step that can make the difference between panic and survival when you are completely alone. When choking happens and you are completely alone, there is a moment where everything becomes very real very fast. That moment is often described by survivors as a sudden realization: no one is coming right now. And that realization is both terrifying and, strangely, clarifying, because clarity is what you need most in those seconds. If you are still able to stand, your immediate priority is to use your body as a tool. I want you to think of it not as panic, but as problem-solving under pressure. Now listen carefully. If you cannot breathe and you cannot speak, the most effective self-rescue technique is to generate strong, sudden abdominal pressure. As I mentioned earlier, place your fist just above your belly button, cover it with your other hand, and thrust inward and upward with force. But here is what many people don't realize. The timing and repetition matter. One single attempt may not be enough. You must repeat the motion in quick succession, each time trying to create enough pressure to push air upward from your lungs. That burst of air is what can potentially dislodge the obstruction. It may feel exhausting. Your body may begin to shake. But remember, your lungs still contain air in those first moments, and that air is your only tool. If you are unable to perform this movement effectively while standing, immediately move toward a stable object, a chair back, a countertop, even the edge of a sink, anything firm. Then position your upper abdomen against it and thrust your body downward sharply. This creates the same internal pressure from a different angle. It is not about elegance, it is about force. Now, I need to address something very important that often delays people during emergencies: embarrassment. Some individuals hesitate because they are in public, or even at home and worried about making noise or causing damage. But choking does not care about comfort, appearance, or inconvenience. It is purely mechanical. Either air moves or it does not. And when air does not move, the body begins to shut down its systems in a predictable order. First, speech becomes impossible. Then coordination weakens. Then vision may start to narrow or blur. Finally, if the blockage remains, consciousness can fade. This is why early action is everything. Another subtle but important point: do not waste time repeatedly checking if the object is still there using your fingers unless you can clearly see it and safely remove it. Blindly reaching into the throat can sometimes push the obstruction deeper, making the situation worse. I've seen well-intentioned attempts accidentally complicate emergencies. Your priority is pressure, airflow, and urgency, not searching. Now, there is also a psychological trap that happens in these moments. The brain often tries to convince you that you can wait just a little longer. That maybe coughing again will fix it. That maybe it will pass. But if you are already at the stage where no air is moving, waiting is the most dangerous decision possible because oxygen does not pause. It continues to drop second by second. And what happens next in the body, when oxygen levels reach a critical point, is something every adult should understand, especially those living alone or at higher risk. When oxygen levels continue to fall during a choking emergency, the body enters a stage where survival becomes increasingly difficult, not because you are weak, but because every organ is now working under extreme stress. The brain, which consumes a large portion of your oxygen supply, begins to respond first. You may feel lightheaded, almost as if the room is shifting slightly. Some people describe a tunnel-like sensation in their vision, where the edges of what they can see start to fade. This is not imagination. It is a physiological response to oxygen deprivation. At the same time, your body releases stress hormones like adrenaline. This is why, even in a dangerous moment, you may feel a strange surge of energy or urgency. Your heart may pound harder. Your muscles may feel tense. This is the body's emergency survival system activating. But here is the difficult truth. This system is powerful yet limited in time. If the airway remains blocked, the body cannot sustain itself on adrenaline alone. I've seen people assume that because they are still conscious, they are safe for a little longer. Unfortunately, that is not how oxygen dependency works. The margin between consciousness and collapse can be very short. Now, I want you to understand something that often surprises patients. During choking, panic is not your enemy, but uncontrolled panic is. Controlled urgency can drive action, but uncontrolled panic leads to wasted motion, confusion, and hesitation. That is why the techniques we discussed are so important. They give your body something structured to do when your mind is overwhelmed. If you are still able to act, continue with firm abdominal thrusts or pressure against a solid surface. Do not switch strategies repeatedly. Consistency matters in these critical moments. Another important detail: posture and airflow mechanics. If you are leaning forward slightly while attempting self-rescue, you are actually helping gravity assist in moving the obstruction upward. Many people instinctively lean backward or freeze upright rigidly, which can reduce effectiveness. Small adjustments in body position can make a meaningful difference when time is extremely limited. I also want to address something emotional here, because it matters. Fear of death during choking is one of the most intense fears the human body can experience. It can feel overwhelming in seconds. But interestingly, survivors often report something else afterward, not just fear, but regret. Regret that they didn't know what to do sooner. Regret that they hesitated. Regret that they assumed it would pass naturally. That is why awareness changes outcomes. There is another subtle warning sign I want you to remember. Sometimes, before a full choking event, people experience repeated mild choking episodes while eating or drinking. They may cough slightly, clear their throat, or feel food slipping the wrong way. Many ignore this, assuming it is normal aging. But repeated minor episodes can indicate changes in swallowing coordination that increase future risk. This does not mean something catastrophic is happening, but it does mean your body is changing, and it deserves attention. And when we move closer to the most critical moments of choking, there is a final stage where the body begins to shut down protective responses. Understanding this stage can help you recognize urgency even earlier, before it becomes irreversible. At this stage of a choking emergency, the body begins to shift from active struggle to survival shutdown. This is the moment many people underestimate, because outwardly it may look like the person is simply still trying. But internally, oxygen levels are now critically low. You may notice increasing weakness in your arms and legs. Movements that were once forceful begin to feel slower, less coordinated. Your hands may tremble. Your balance may become unstable. This is not emotional panic alone. This is the brain receiving insufficient oxygen to maintain precise motor control. And I need you to understand something very clearly. When this happens, your window for effective self-rescue becomes extremely narrow. If you are still conscious, you must continue immediate physical action without pause. This is not the time to rest between attempts. Every interruption allows oxygen levels to drop further. Keep using abdominal thrusts or firm downward pressure against a stable surface. Even if it feels like it is not working immediately, Repetition is essential because the goal is to create enough internal force to shift the obstruction even slightly. Sometimes, even a small movement of the blockage is enough to restore partial airflow. And partial airflow changes everything, because the moment even a small amount of air begins to pass, the body can start to recover. One important warning here: do not lie flat on your back during a choking episode unless you have no other option due to collapse. Being flat can sometimes reduce the natural help gravity provides in moving the obstruction. If you feel yourself becoming weak, try to remain forward-leaning if possible. Another thing I want to emphasize is vocal ability. If you can make any sound at all, even a faint cough or gasp, that is still a sign that air is moving. It means your airway is not completely sealed. In that case, continue forceful coughing combined with movement, because your body is still attempting to clear the obstruction. But if there is complete silence, no airflow, and no sound at all, that is when urgency reaches its highest point. At this stage, many people begin to experience narrowing awareness. Thoughts may become fragmented. You might feel detached or disoriented. This is the brain prioritizing survival over conscious control. It is also the point where fear can either freeze the body or trigger one final burst of effort. That final burst matters. I have seen cases where a single strong, well-timed movement has made the difference between collapse and recovery. That is why continuing action, even when it feels hopeless, is still medically important. And I want to be honest with you, not every situation resolves quickly. But what significantly improves survival chances is early recognition, immediate action, and understanding what your body is trying to do under stress. Most people don't fail because they don't try. They struggle because they don't know what is happening fast enough. Now, before we finish, there is one final layer of protection I want to share with you, something that can reduce your risk of choking happening in the first place, especially after 60, when swallowing changes are often subtle but important. Prevention is where most choking emergencies can truly be reduced, especially in adults over 60. And I want to say this gently but clearly: your body does change with age, and those changes are not always obvious until a stressful moment reveals them. Swallowing, for example, is a surprisingly complex coordination of muscles and reflexes. With age, that coordination can slow down slightly. It doesn't mean something is wrong with you, but it does mean your margin for error becomes smaller, especially with certain foods and habits. One of the most common situations I've seen is rushing during meals. Even healthy individuals sometimes talk while eating, laugh mid-bite, or swallow before chewing completely. In younger years, the body compensates easily. Later in life, that compensation is less reliable. Dry mouth is another subtle factor. Many common medications can reduce saliva production, and saliva is essential for smooth swallowing. Without it, food may not move as easily through the throat, increasing the chance of a brief blockage or coughing episode. Dentures or dental changes can also slightly alter how food is broken down before swallowing. Again, this is not dangerous on its own, but it changes the mechanics your body relies on every day. What I want you to take from this is not fear, but awareness. Most choking events do not happen suddenly without warning signs. There are often small signals beforehand: slight coughing during meals, needing extra water to swallow, or feeling like food briefly sticks and then passes. These are your body's early communication signals, and listening to them can make a real difference. Eating more slowly, taking smaller bites, and avoiding distraction during meals are simple but powerful protective habits. Sitting upright while eating also helps maintain proper alignment for swallowing. And something very important: staying hydrated throughout the day supports safer swallowing function than most people realize. Even mild dehydration can make food passage less smooth. Now I want to bring this full circle. The reason I shared everything with you today is not to create fear, but to create preparedness. Because choking is one of those rare emergencies where what you do in the first moments matters more than almost anything else. If you are alone, your awareness becomes your first responder, and knowledge becomes your lifeline. If this information helped you understand something new about your body or safety, I want you to remember this. Sharing it with others could genuinely help someone one day. Many adults live alone or eat alone more often than they admit. And finally, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. I share these calm, medically grounded explanations because I want people to feel more prepared, not more afraid. Take care of yourself. And stay aware of the quiet signals your body is always giving you.